Hello, everybody. This is Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries. Thank you for joining me this morning. We are going to be reading Genesis 48 this morning. So I want to welcome everybody here to the reading this morning, the live reading. And we usually get on earlier in the day, but today we're getting on now, and hopefully you're with us live. If not, you're joining us on the replay. And we have a lot to cover today, so get out your Bibles, and we're going to be looking at some maps today. We are looking today at Jacob blessing Manasseh and Ephraim. And there's so much in this chapter. And when I say we need to read the Bible from the beginning so we could really understand it, this is like one of the most important chapters to really understand what in the world the Bible is talking about when they get into the different, the tribes and the placement of Israel and so on. So this is a significant chapter we're going to be reading and covering. But before I do that, somebody missed something when we did chapter 47. When we finished chapter 47 yesterday, I left out some verses at the end. So I'm going to read them right now. And nobody caught that or nobody said anything. But I left out some verses at the end. Jacob and Joseph die in Egypt. So we're going to be first reading chapter 47, verse 27 to 31. We're going to finish chapter 47, and then we're going to get into 48. And again, there's so much coming in chapter 48 today, so I'm excited about that. And stuff that it took me years to understand, and hopefully I'll express it today so you'll get it and understand it. But let's finish chapter 47. It says, Jacob, and I didn't do this on purpose. I missed it and caught it later. Jacob and Joseph die in Egypt. It says in verse 27, meanwhile, the people of Israel settled in the region of Goshen in Egypt. And there they acquired property, and they were fruitful, and their population grew rapidly. Jacob lived for 17 years after his arrival in Egypt. So he lived 147 in all his years. So he was 17 years in Egypt. Remember, he thought he was just going to go down for a short little trip, but he ended up staying there for 17 years and never returning alive back to Canaan. He actually died in Egypt. And this is a good review of the previous chapter before we get into 48. So verse 29 says, as the time of his death drew near to Jacob, called for his son Joseph and said to him, please do me this favor. Put your hand under my thigh and swear that you will treat me with unfailing love by honoring this last request. Now remember, putting the hand under the thigh, when did we last see that? When Isaac wanted to get Abraham? Abraham wanted to get a wife for Isaac, and he told the servant to go, and he made him put his hand under his thigh. That was the way they did it back then. That was their today in court, you might put your hand on the Bible. Back then, they put their hand under someone's thigh. And it says here, do not bury me in Egypt. When I die, please take my body out of Egypt and bury me with my ancestors. So that was his request. So Joseph promised, I will do as you ask. Now, if Joseph knew, I don't know if he knew about it yet, but I'm sure he knew about his mother just dying and being buried there on the side of the road and not being taken back. So Jacob had a reason to worry. Maybe he wouldn't do this, but Joseph gave his word. I mean, you gave your word back then, you kept it. And so Joseph said he will do that. And 31, Jacob says, swear that you will do it. Jacob insisted. So Joseph gave his oath. And Jacob bowed humbly at the head of his bed. So the word was set. That was the end of that. But Jacob didn't die yet. Jacob had one other mighty blessing to give, or two blessings to give. And we're going to discuss that here in chapter 48 of Genesis. So thank you, everyone, for joining us now. And I'm so glad we caught that, because I want to read every single word of the Bible with you live here over the internet as Yahweh wills. And we can get through this together. So a lot of people have questions about the different tribes of Israel and how exactly everything happened with Israel. And this is the chapter. We're almost done with chapter 40 with the book of Genesis, and then we'll get into the book of Exodus. But How did the land get divided and so on? And here is what we discussed. Remember, Jacob had a good amount of daughters. Only one was recorded, but he had a good amount of daughters. But he only had one son. He had one son. I mean, he only had 12 sons. One recorded daughter, Dinah, but he had other daughters, but he had 12 sons. And you would figure those are the 12 tribes of Israel. But no, they're not. Let's read chapter 48. It says, one day, not long after the word came to Joseph, your father is failing rapidly. So Joseph went to visit his father, and he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. So we took his two sons with him. Let me get into. I'm going to be looking at a lot of translations today here. So let's see. He took his two sons with him. We'll read again. And after these things happened, one said to Joseph, behold, your father is sick. And he took his two sons with him, Manasseh and Ephraim. And one spoke to Jacob and said, behold, your son Joseph has come to you. And Israel took strength and sat on the bed. And Jacob said to Joseph, El Shaddai, which means the Almighty. El Shaddai, which means the Almighty. Appeared to me in Luz, in a land of Canaan, and blessed me, and said to me, behold, I will make you fruitful and will multiply you, and will give you multitude of people after you as a continual possession. As a continual possession. So I'm going to open up the One New Man Bible here and look at this also, because this is very important, folks. I want you to catch this. So a lot of good stuff here today. Let's get to 48. So verse 4 here says, in the One New Man Bible, and said to me, behold, I shall make you fruitful and multiply you. I shall make of you a congregation of people, and I shall give the land to your seed after you for an everlasting inheritance. So that's chapter 4 in the One New Man Bible, and it's so much more clear and why I like it. And it says here in the note, it said, this is a large number of people, a cohesive community. So this is what Yahweh told him, that your people will become this cohesive community. Now, I do have the James Moffat scriptures as well. And in this translation, which is in chronicle order, it has a little difference of order as well. So you get into verses 1, 2, 3, 3 and 4, 5, and 6. And then after 6, it places verses 21 and 22 there. And then it continues with the rest. So when we get there, we're going to look at that as well. So a lot to stick with, and I'm even going to show you some maps today. So bear with me here. Let's take it verse by verse. So now we're there. It says verse 4. He promised him. Jacob is reminding Joseph, when I was in Luz, this is what Yahweh told me. I will become a great nation. And with many descendants, with many multitude of descendants. So that's let's go to verse 5. Verse 5 says, and now, verse 4 in the Hebraic Roots Bible says, and he said to me, behold, I will make you fruitful and multiply you, and will give you a multitude of people, and I will give you the land to your seed after you as a continual possession. So verse 5 says, and now your two sons, those born to you in a land of Egypt before my coming to you in Egypt, are mine, Ephraim and Manasseh. Like Reuben and Simeon, even they shall be mine. Now, let me get my highlighter, because I think that's going to be the verse of the day right there, verse 5. And now your two sons, born to you in the land of Egypt, are mine, Ephraim and Manasseh. So like Reuben and Simeon, even they shall be mine. So he only mentions Reuben and Simeon. He doesn't mention the others, but he's given an example here. They shall be mine. And I'm going to look at verse 5 here in the One New Man Bible. This is just great. It's just so exciting. It says, "And now your two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you in the land of Egypt before my coming to Egypt, are mine, like Reuben and Simeon. They will be mine." Now let's continue to verse 6. Okay, verse 6 says, "And your children which your father after them will be yours." So, and your children which you father after them will be yours, and will be called after the name of their brothers in their inheritance. So basically in verse 6, it's saying any children you have after Ephraim and Manasseh, they're not mine, but these children are mine, Ephraim and Manasseh. That's verse 6 in the One New Man Bible. So let me get to verse 6 here. Let's read the New Living. Let's see the New Living Testament in verse. Well, no, let's go to the Hebraic Roots Bible. It says, "And your offspring, which you father after them, they shall be yours according to the name of their brothers. They shall be called in their inheritance." So now we get into the first note here, verse 2. It says, "Ephraim and Manasseh were literally adopted by Jacob and became Joseph's double portion for his birthright. Now he is 2 tribes out of 13. 2 tribes out of 13. So just stick with us here, because you figure, well, Jacob had 12 sons. So how do we have 13 tribes? And if Joseph is the 12th son, and then there's 2 more added, that would be more than 13. That would be 14. So what exactly is happening here with the tribes? Because ultimately we got to get to 12 tribes of Israel. Remember, when we get to Israel, there were 12 tribes of Israel, which got the portion of the land when they went into the promised land. And eventually, after King Solomon, those 12 tribes were split into 2 nations, or two parts of Israel. And we're gonna be getting up to that. So we read that was chapter 5, verse 5. Let's get to verse 6. And let me see here. And this one is verse 6 says, "And your children which you father after them will be yours." Okay, verse 7. "As for me, when I came from Canaan, Rachel died besides me in the land of Canaan on the way, when yet there was but a little way to come to Ephraim. And I buried her there on the road to Ephraim. The same is Bethlehem." So he's telling Joseph now this is where he buried him. But Joseph already promised him, "Look, you're going to take my bones back. So now I might as well tell you this, where your mother was buried." Verse 7 in the Jewish in the Hebraic Roots Bible. And I, when I came from Padan Aram, Rachel died on me in the land of Canaan, in the way, with only a little way to come to Ephraim. And I buried her there in the way to Ephraim, it being Bethlehem." And now we're going to get into a note in the New Living Testament. I told you I'm going to be going back and forth today. Hopefully you're sticking with me. So verse 7. "Long ago, as I was returning from Padan Aram, Rachel died in the land of Canaan. We were still on the way of some distance from Ephraim, and is Bethlehem. So with great sorrow I buried her there beside the road to Ephraim." So it says with great sorrow. So now in verses 8 to 20, here's where we get into it. So the first thing I'm going to say is I'm going to switch over to the James Moffat Bible. It has different it's in chronicle order basically, and it literally puts verses 21 and 22 between verses 6 and 7. So I'm going to read that, and then we're going to get into chapter 8. So everyone's with me? Give me a thumbs up if you're with me, because I know I'm going back and forth a lot here, but this is important. And I want to make sure you guys understand if you're watching this live right now. If you're watching this replay, the people that are live will tell me I'm not going too fast and you're understanding. But basically right now, so you get it, is Joseph came into, Joseph was in Egypt. He had 2 sons. Here comes Jacob. Jacob comes in and with his 11 other sons, and he wants to bless and adopt Ephraim and Manasseh, which is Joseph's sons. And he says, whatever sons you have after this are yours, but these two are mine. And this, in fact, is Joseph's double portion. I'm going to get into that. So, but in a chronicle order, it literally puts verses 21 and 22 between verse 6 and 7. So it says, these will be mine as much as Reuben and Simeon. And then verse 21, and the offspring born to you after them are to be yours, renowned as belonging to these two brothers. So 21, and Israel said to Joseph, I am dying, but Yahweh will be with you and bring you back to your fatherland. Moreover, I assign you the mountain slope of a Shechem on the heights above your brothers, which I won from the Amorites by my sword and bow. So basically, he's talking about what he's giving to Joseph and Joseph's tribes, which he talk. And remember, when he says he won him with a sword and bow, this is we saw what happened in Shechem previously with the rape of Dinah and how the brothers smote the people there. But now we switch back. It goes back to verse 7. As for myself, when I was on our way to Paramount, I buried your mother there, or Rachel there. Now verse 8. So we don't need this scriptures anymore. We go to verse 8. And the note here says, well, let's read verse 8. It says, then Jacob looked over at the two boys. Are these your sons? He asked. And he only asked because he was his eyes were very dimming at this time, just like his father's Isaac. His eyes were dimming. Remember, he was old. And it says in verse 8 to 20, Jacob gave Ephraim, instead of his older brother Manasseh, the greater blessing. When Joseph objected, Jacob refused to listen because Yahweh had told him that Ephraim would become greater. Yahweh often works in unexpected ways. When he chooses people to fulfill his plan, he always goes deeper than appearance, tradition, or position, and sometimes surprises us by choosing the less obvious person. At least by human reasoning, Yahweh can use you to carry out his plan, even if you don't think you have the qualifications. So remember, the order was for the firstborn to receive the blessing. That was the order, and that was the way it's supposed to be. But we saw that didn't happen with Isaac and with Jacob and Esau, where the younger brother got the blessing. Some say he stole the blessing, but remember, Yahweh had already promised it to the younger one. And we see this often in Scripture. Even though the word says the firstborn will get the blessing, we see several different times where it skipped the eldest and the blessing was moved down. So this is important, because as we read the verse, we'll first read in here, we'll continue reading verse 9. It says, in verse 9, yes, Jacob told him, these are the two sons Yahweh has given me here in Egypt. And Jacob said, bring them close to me so I can bless them. And Jacob was half blind because of his age and could not see. So Joseph brought the boys close to him, and Jacob kissed and embraced them. Okay, that was up to verse 10. Then Jacob said to Joseph, I never thought I would see your face again, but now Yahweh has let me see your children also. And the verse here would say, when Joseph became a slave, Jacob thought he was dead and wept in despair. But eventually Yahweh's plan allowed Jacob to reign regain not only his son, but his grandchildren as well. So this is just recapping what's happening here. And 12, Joseph moved the boys who were at their grandfather's knees, and he bowed with his face to the ground. Then he positioned the boys in front of Jacob. With his right hand, he directed Ephraim towards Jacob's left hand, And with his left hand, he put Manasseh in Jacob's right hand. But Jacob crossed his arms as he reached out to lay his hands on the boys' heads. He put his right hand on the head of Ephraim, though he was the younger boy, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, though he was the firstborn. Then he blessed Joseph and said, "May the God before whom my grandfather Abraham, my father Isaac walked, the Elohim who has been my shepherd all my life to this very day, the angel who has redeemed me from harm, may he bless these boys. May they preserve my name and the names of Abraham and Isaac, and may the descendants multiply greatly throughout the earth." May the descendants multiply greatly throughout the earth. And it says here in the note here, it says, Jacob spoke of Yahweh as his shepherd throughout his life. In his old age, he could clearly see his dependence upon Yahweh. This marks a total change in the way he was before when he wasn't counting on Yahweh, and it just shows how he matured and so on. So it says in verse 17, but Joseph was upset when he saw that his father placed the right hand on Ephraim's head. So Joseph lifted it to move it from Ephraim's head and Manasseh's head. "No, my father," he said, "this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused. "I know, my son, I know," he replied. "Manasseh will also become a great people, but his younger brother will become even greater, and the descendants will become a multitude of nations." So that is powerful right there, and we're going to be reading about that in the other chapters, and then finally it says, Jacob blessed the boys that day with this blessing. "The people of Israel will use your names when they are giving a blessing. They will say, 'May God make you prosperous as Ephraim and Manasseh,' in the way Jacob put Ephraim ahead of Manasseh." Then Jacob said to Joseph, "Look, I am about to die, but Yahweh will be with you and will take you back to Canaan, the land of your ancestors, and beyond which I have given your brothers. I am giving you an extra portion to the land that I took from the Amorites with my sword and bow." So we're just getting started. There's a lot here. So we're going to read, and I'm going to go over this, but I want you to understand this. Jacob was given these young boys land occupied by the Philistines and Canaanites. This gift became a reality when the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh occupied the east and west sides of the Jordan River. So we're done with the New Living Testament, and I want to get into some great notes here in the One New Man Bible and also in the Hebraic Roots Bible, so we get to understand this. And then I'm going to show you some maps to explain what's exactly happening here. So it says in verse 19, the Hebrew Hagim literally means fullness of the nations, which were heathen. So it means fullness of the nation, which were heathen. And as we go back to verse 19 again, it says, and his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know it. He also will become a people, and he also will be great. But truly his younger brother will be greater than he, and his seeds will become the fullness of the nations." Remember, the nations are like heathens. So they're the Gentiles. So this is important, because when somebody says they're a believing Gentile, that's an oxymoron. You can't be a believing Gentile. Once you accept Yeshua as Messiah, you now become part of Israel, the commonwealth of Israel. It's not where you came from, it's where you're going. And why is this so important? Because the Torah is for Israel. And people that don't understand this, when they say that, they think the Torah is for the Jewish people. No, but there were 12 tribes of Israel, not one tribe. It's not only for the Jewish people. And even today in the Messianic Hebraic Roots community, you have two sides. You have the one side of it that says, well, it's only for Israel. Everyone else that's not Jewish can sit in the back and just watch. No, but we have to understand, once you become a believer in Yeshua Messiah and you decide to follow him, You are now Israel. Just like the Egyptians in the Exodus that came out and became part of the Commonwealth of Israel, they are all responsible for the guidelines and instructions of our Creator. So important to understand. So that when we get the nations, a kingdom of nations will come out and become part of Israel. So that's extremely important, and we're going to see a map of this, so we understand this more clearly in a moment here. So remember this, folks. Remember this, because if you're watching right now, so many people desire to have the blood of Judah. They say, "Oh, I got Jewish blood in me, or Jewish heritage in me," and so on. So be it. Yes, they're the chosen people, the first that Yeshua came to. So be it. But you know what? It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. What matters is where your heart is. Is your heart for Yeshua or not? That is everything. That's what matters. And even your blood. If you got the blood of Yeshua covering you, that's what matters. That's what matters. If you've accepted that you are Israel and you are responsible for Torah, that's so important to understand. There's no excuses, folks. We all have to seek the will of our Father, and that is what Torah is, the will of our Father. So there's more notes here, and then I'm going to show you some maps. So getting back to verse 19. And his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He also shall be a people, and he shall become great. But his younger brother shall become greater than he, and his seed shall become the fullness of the nations." The fullness of the nations. And the note here says, Ephraim would go into captivity and lose his identity, and his calling back into covenant relationship from being lost is in the last days would be the fullness of the nations. Would be the fullness of the nations. And there's some scriptures that refer to this in the renewed covenant that we're going to look at now, because it's that special and important that we're going to look at these scriptures. We're going to look at first. Let's look at Isaiah 25:7. Isaiah 25:7. You don't have to turn there, but I will. Isaiah 25:7 says, okay, Isaiah 25:7 says, and on the mountain he will destroy the face of the covering, cast over all peoples, and the veil that is spread over all nations. He will destroy the veil that's separating the nations. It says the covering and the veil perverted the heathens from seeing and committing to the Most High Elohim. And that veil is taken away. Hallelujah. And that's what Yeshua has done. He's united us. We're united in Yeshua Messiah. Hallelujah. And the other verse is, another verse in the renewed covenant is going to be Romans 11:25. Remember, you can't understand the renewed covenant if you haven't read the Torah. It's so imperative you read it so you don't miss stuff like this. Verse 11:25 in Romans. For I do not want you to be ignorant, brothers, of the mystery, lest you become conceited. Lest you become conceited, because dulled preparation in part has come upon Israel, until fullness of the heathens would come in it, until the fullness of the heathens will come into it, into the restoration of the lost identity of the lost tribes of Israel would come back. And it says here again in this note, it says literally, that you were not wise in the power of relying on your own wisdom. Verse 25, another verse that says in Genesis 48:19, when Jacob blessed Ephraim, the Hebrew literally speaks of the fullness of the heathens, which is translated group of nations, a multitude of nations. Hallelujah. A multitude of nations. And then so this is it, folks. I want to show you now a map. Let's try to do a screen share so I could show you. And if you're on Facebook, I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to see the map, but you can go to the YouTube page Torah Life Ministries or the website Torah Life Ministries on the replay, and you'll see the maps of these. But we'll get to the Sheen Square. Hopefully this will work okay. Let's see. Let's see. Let me try to do this. If I can figure it out. Let's see. No, let's see. Stop. Okay, I couldn't figure out how to do that. Let me try one more time to do the screen share. All right. Well, that's not working, but basically understand. We had 12 tribes. Now, it says we got these tribes. Now, how do we get the number of the tribes? If there's 12 sons, and then you add Ephraim and Manasseh, that would equal what? That would equal 12 plus, what is my information? That would equal 12, 13, 14. So now you're looking at 14 tribes. But here's what happens. Joseph is replaced with Ephraim and Manasseh. So now you take 12 sons of Jacob, take away one, is now you have 11. So you're taking away Joseph, now you have 11, but you're adding two more. You're adding Ephraim and Manasseh. So now you have 12, now you have 13 tribes. Well, 13 tribes, that doesn't add up because there's 12 tribes of Israel. So how do we how do we get 12 from 13? Well, remember, the Levites did not get a portion. So that you take that away, and that's where your 12 tribes are. So Joseph and Levi, there's no tribe of Joseph or Levi. There's Joseph represented in his double portion of Ephraim and Manasseh, and then Levi didn't get a portion. So that's where your 12 tribes are. So you had the 12 tribes set up, and then later on, after King Solomon, the division of the nations, and then you had the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom of Israel before they were taken into captivity, and that's the way it was. And I'm sorry, the maps I'm not being able to figure it out today. How to show them here. Let me try one more time to see if we can get these maps on here. Let's see. One more attempt. One more attempt. Try to get the maps. Let's see. Oh, I know how to do it. I got it. I'm going to get it. So I hope everyone's getting this and everyone's understanding this. And everyone's realizing what exactly is happening here. So let's go here and here and here. Okay, very good. So I think I got it now. So we're going to open up these tribes. And thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning and watching. Okay, now I got it. Beautiful. Okay. So here we go. If you see the map on the screen right now, oh, well, let's see. Present to everyone. Okay, so here we go. If you see the map on the screen right now, you see here, these are the 12 tribes of Israel. And you see we have Manasseh. These two are Manasseh. And then we see here, you have Ephraim right here. These were the lands that were given and the allotment that was given when the children went into the promised land. And we have half of the tribe of Reuben here. And so this is it. So this map, if you get this in your mind, you're going to understand scripture much clearer later on when we get into this. So again, here's Manasseh and here's Ephraim. This is Joseph's double portion. You don't see Levi on this map. And Manasseh and Ephraim are representative as Joseph. So let's come back here. All right, so that's that, and then let's give you one more picture while we're still doing this. We'll give you this one here. Okay, so now we see the northern and the southern tribes of Israel. That was after King Solomon's, how they were divided. And then you had southern, which is Judah, and then you had the north, which was Israel. So when you start reading in Kings about the different tribes, and that's what we're looking at to give you a better idea. And we also read about Moab and the Edomites, and they're no longer there from Edom. But that gives you a better idea. So we're getting a good foundation here on understanding. And then let's give you one more picture here so you get it before we finish here today. Let's give you this one. So now it says here, so we have the southern kingdom of Judah, beginning with King Rehoboam. There were 20 kings of Judah. Some were evil and some were good. And the end of that was invaded and taken captive by the Babylonians in 586, as said in 2 Kings 24:25. And then we go over to the northern kingdom of Israel, beginning with Jeroboam. And there were 19 kings, and all did evil in Yahweh's sight, and they were invaded and taken captive by the Assyrians in 722 BC, and that was in 2 Kings 17. So that's where we get all of the maps and to set it up and just to give you a clearer picture of the foundation. Again, if you're watching on Facebook or somewhere else, you could always go and check out the YouTube link later on my website, TorahLifeMinistries.org. But that was chapter 48, and it's bringing us 2 steps closer to the end of the book of Genesis. And I hope, I know I was jumping around a lot today, but I hope you understood what I was explaining here and about the different blessings and what that means and what's going to happen. Because in Exodus, we're going to be getting into the story of the Exodus to Egypt, of what happened with that. So we're not going to be looking at the tribes as much until we get to the end of Exodus. And then we're going to start to see when the tribes are going into the promised land, and why these tribes matter and everything else. So I hope that makes sense to everybody. And tomorrow morning I'll be on. I'm planning on being on at 5:30 in the morning to do the live reading if you want to see it live. If not, watch the replay. Please put your comments and questions below the video. Please share this with others today. I'll have a lot of great things happening this week, and we're going to be finishing the book of Genesis and then reading the book of Leviticus. So thank you. We're doing it. We're getting through the scriptures live every day. And remember, the Bible is the most important object you have in your house. It is the holy words of our Creator. It's not just another book. It shouldn't even be with the other books on the bookshelf. It is something so much more sacred. You know, if you have a loved one that died and she wrote you a whole bunch of notes, you know, you wouldn't just throw it on the shelf and not give it reverence. You'd hold it and cherish it. And this is what the scriptures are, folks. So praise Yahweh. Thank you very much for watching today. Pray, praise, proclaim, reading, repent, submit. Have a blessed day, everybody, and shalom, shalom.